The night sky was hidden behind thick clouds, but Celine didn't need to look up to know the moon was full. She felt it in her bones, a slow ache that throbbed through her ribs and shoulders, making her feel heavier with each breath. It was always like this, as if her body knew the truth before her eyes did. She scrubbed at the wooden kitchen floor, her knees burning against the planks, her raw hands wrinkled from hours in soap water. Around her the pack house was alive with sound. Laughter carried down the halls, joined by music, clinking glasses, and the heavy stamping of boots in dance. The Autumn Moon Festival. The one night of the year when the alphas of many packs came together to form alliances, to negotiate territory, and more importantly to seek out unmated omegas. Celine paused in her scrubbing, listening to the distant cheer. Her chest tightened. She remembered standing in that same great hall 3 years ago, trembling in her mother's blue dress, waiting for her turn to be scented. One by one the other omegas had walked with bowed heads. Alphas leaned forward, inhaling their sweetness, deciding who was worthy, who carried compatibility. Celine had walked too, her heart hammering in her chest. And then, nothing. Faces had turned away. Some alphas had wrinkled their noses in disgust. Others had looked right through her as if she wasn't even there. When it was over, silence had spread through the hall like fire. "She is defective," the alpha's mate had declared. Her voice had rung out sharp and cold. "No scent. Barren most likely." The shame of that moment still lived inside Celine's bones. Now, as she wiped sweat from her brow, she whispered to herself, "Defective." Her hand reached for the pendant hidden beneath her gray dress. It was a small amber stone wrapped in silver wire, strung on a leather cord. Her grandmother's last gift before she died. "This will protect you when I cannot," she had said, pressing it into Celine's palm. Grandmother had been strange, different, always speaking of plants and stars, always knowing things before they happened. The pack had called her odd. But she was the only one who had never looked at Celine with pity. Celine closed her eyes and pressed the pendant to her lips. "Protect me," she whispered. Through the small kitchen window she saw torchlight spilling across the courtyard as another pack arrived. Her breath caught. The northern wolves. They were whispered about everywhere, wild, fierce and feared. Tall figures cloaked in furs, moving like shadows, descended from the first wolves blessed by the gods. And at their center walked him, the Alpha King. Even from a distance Celine knew he was unlike the others. He moved with quiet power, a deadly grace that drew her gaze without permission. His hair was long and black, catching the torchlight. His shoulders were broad, his stride steady. Celine leaned closer to the window, holding her breath. Her body prickled with something strange, like heat crawling through her veins. And then he stopped. His head turned. His eyes found hers through the glass, as if he had known she was watching all along. Celine gasped and stumbled backward, knocking over her bucket. Soapy water spilled across the floor. "Celine," the head cook barked, rushing in with her flushed face red from wine. "Clumsy girl. Clean that up at once. And when you're done, take these trays to the council chamber. The Alpha meets with the Northern King." Celine dropped to her knees, scrubbing at the spill, her hands shaking. But her mind replayed that moment. His gaze heavy as a hand on her skin, and the way her heart had lurched as if pulled by invisible strings. Something had happened in that look. Something she couldn't explain. The festival had begun long before Celine carried the silver trays through the empty hallways. The great hall was filled with light and music. Omegas in bright dresses twirled under the glow of torches, their laughter sweet, their scents drifting like perfume through the air. Celine passed by the doors quietly, keeping her head down. She could hear the alphas calling out, their deep voices mingling with the music. "Look at her, sweet as honey. This one's scent is strong. Perfect for breeding." Celine's hands tightened on the tray. She remembered when those words had been spoken for others and never for her. Her mother had sewn her a blue dress, soft and neat, though nothing grand. Celine had stood in line, her heart pounding. She thought, maybe this time. Maybe someone will see me. But when her turn came, the air had gone still. Alphas had leaned forward to scent her, then recoiled. Some had looked away. Others had simply ignored her. The worst had been the Alpha's mate, her lips curling as she declared Celine barren, useless. A defective omega. Celine had wanted to disappear. Now, as she hurried down the corridor, she whispered to herself, "I am nothing. The council chamber loomed ahead, its tall wooden doors carved with symbols of wolves and battles. She slipped inside, moving quickly, hoping to remain unseen. The room was empty for now. Stone walls lined with faded banners and mounted heads of beasts gave the chamber a heavy air. A great oak table stretched across the center, surrounded by carved chairs. Celine moved quietly, placing platters of meat and cheese, filling goblets with red wine. She was setting down the last cup when the doors creaked open. Her body froze. Alpha Alaric entered first, golden-haired, broad-shouldered, his jaw sharp and proud. Behind him came two betas. Then the northern warriors, scarred and tall, their eyes like ice. And then, him, the Alpha King. Up close, Celine could see his face. Sharp cheekbones, a scar across his eyebrow, a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes were silver-gray rimmed with gold, glowing faintly in the firelight. They seemed to strip her bare with one look. He wore no golden armor or fine leathers like the others. Only black clothes beneath a cloak of silver-gray fur. Simplicity, but somehow more commanding than all the jewels of the other alphas. "King Kale," Alaric said with forced cheer. "We are honored by your presence after so many years." Kale's deep voice rumbled like stones grinding together. "Let us not waste time. You know why I am here." Alaric's smile flickered. The curse. Celine's breath caught. Everyone knew the tale of the Northern Curse. That a witch had condemned their lands to endless winter unless the Alpha King found his true mate. But no one believed it was real. Kale's jaw tightened. "Why people suffer? 3 months of sun is all we have now. The rest is darkness and ice." One of Alaric's betas scoffed. "And you think an Omega's kiss will break such a thing? That's nothing more than a nursery tale." Kale's eyes flashed. "Mock all you want, but my grandmother saw the truth. Only when the forgotten one is remembered, when the scentless carries the sweetest perfume, will the sun return." Celine's chest tightened. The scentless. Kale's nostrils flared. He stiffened, his gaze sweeping the room. "There's something here. Hidden." Her heart thudded so loudly she thought they all could hear it. The pendant against her chest grew hot. He moved, slow and deliberate, circling the table. The air thickened with his power. His head tilted, listening, hunting. And then, the curtain she hid behind was yanked aside. Silver-gold eyes locked with hers. For a long moment the world fell away. There was only the two of them, drawn together by a thread neither could name. "Who are you?" Kale's voice was rough, almost a whisper. Before she could answer, Alaric barked. "No one of consequence. Just a kitchen girl. A defective Omega with no scent. She is nothing." Kale didn't look away. He didn't even blink. His gaze held hers like iron. "Your name?" Her lips trembled. "Celine," she whispered. He inhaled, pupils widening, his eyes darkening with something fierce. "Impossible," he murmured. And then, before the stunned room, the most feared Alpha King in all the lands dropped to one knee before her. "Found you," he said. The pendant on her chest burned hot as fire. Celine's world tilted, everything she thought she knew shattering in that moment. The world outside the council chamber seemed distant, muffled by thick stone walls. Inside, silence reigned. The air felt heavy, as though the weight of generations pressed down on everyone present. Celine could not move. She stood trembling, her back pressed against the wall, every nerve alive under the Northern King's gaze. He remained kneeling, his scarred face lowered, his dark hair falling forward. The sight was so strange it seemed unreal. The Alpha King, feared across the continent, on one knee before her. "Rise, King Kale," Alaric demanded, his voice strained. "This is beneath you. That girl is nothing." Kale did not move. His silver-gold eyes lifted, pinning Celine with a look so intense it made her knees weak. His voice, deep and rough, carried easily through the room. "She is not nothing." Celine's throat tightened. He must be mistaken. He can't mean me. Alaric's betas shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. One muttered, "Has he gone mad?" Alaric stepped closer, his handsome face twisting with disdain. "Celine is a servant. She scrubs floors. She has no scent. She is defective." The word stabbed into Celine like it always did. Her hands trembled. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows where she belonged. But Kale only rose slowly, towering over everyone. His presence filled the chamber like storm clouds gathering. You call her defective, Kale said, his voice low, dangerous. But I sense something here unlike anything I have ever known. You are blind or you hide the truth. Celine's chest rose and fell quickly. Her pendant pulsed with warmth, almost burning now, as if it too responded to his words. Alaric scoffed. You insult me, King of the North. Do you think I would hide an omega of value from my own pack? Kale's eyes narrowed. I do not think. I know. His boots echoed as he stepped closer to Celine. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart thundering so loudly she thought it might burst. He stopped just in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint scar cutting through his eyebrow, the way the firelight glinted in the gold of his irises. Celine, he said again, softly this time almost gently. Look at me. Her breath caught. Slowly, against every instinct, she lifted her gaze. The moment their eyes met, something passed between them. A pull, fierce and undeniable, like the snapping of a cord that had waited years to break. The room seemed to tilt. The air shimmered faintly. Kale inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring. His pupils expanded until only a thin ring of gold remained. Impossible, he murmured. Alaric slammed his hand against the table. Enough. This is nonsense. She is worthless. She belongs to this pack and you will not. Kale ignored him completely. His voice dropped to a murmur only Celine could hear. You are the one. The forgotten one. Celine shook her head, whispering, No, I'm not. I can't be. His large hand lifted, hovering near her cheek but not touching. You feel it too. She could not speak. Her chest ached with something sharp and new, a mixture of fear and hope. The chamber erupted with whispers and protests. Betas argued, voices overlapping. Alaric barked orders for silence. But none of it mattered. Because the Northern King, this man of legend and fear, was looking at Celine as if she were the only thing that existed. Alaric strode forward, his golden hair catching the firelight. His expression was thunderous. This has gone far enough, he snapped. She is nothing but a servant. If you wish to continue negotiations, leave the girl out of it. Kale turned his head slowly, his eyes cold and dangerous. I did not ask you. The weight of his voice pressed down on the chamber. Even Alaric's betas lowered their eyes. Celine's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, but her legs would not obey. Kale looked back at her. His tone softened again. Your pendant. Her hand flew to the amber stone beneath her dress. May I see it? He asked. Celine hesitated. Her grandmother's words rang in her memory. This will protect you when I cannot. But before she could answer, Alaric stepped between them. No. This is absurd. The girl will return to her duties immediately. Enough of this drama. Kale's lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile. His voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. You speak as though you are her master. She is not a thing to be ordered. The chamber went still. Celine swallowed hard, her hand gripping the pendant tightly. She whispered, It's just a stone. Kale's gaze flickered to hers, reading the truth in her eyes. No, he said quietly. It is old magic. It hides you. Masks what you are. Gasps rippled through the room. Celine shook her head, fear rising. You're wrong. I'm not anything. I'm just. You are not just anything, Kale cut in, his tone fierce. Do not ever say that. Alaric's face reddened with anger. She is mine, he growled, his alpha aura pressing against the room. Kale stepped forward, towering over him. She has made her choice. Celine blinked. What choice? She whispered. Kale turned to her, his expression steady. Come with me to the north. Leave this place that has broken you. In my lands you will be honored. Protected. Her stomach twisted. Go with him. Alaric snarled. You cannot simply take one of my pack members. She belongs here. Kale's gaze sharpened. When was the last time you treated her as pack? When was she valued, protected, included? His voice dripped with contempt. I can smell her loneliness. The years of neglect. Do not speak to me of belonging. Alaric flinched, guilt flashing in his eyes before he covered it with rage. Kale turned back to Celine. His voice dropped low, meant only for her. Celine. The choice is yours. The room seemed to hold its breath. Celine's hands shook as she clutched the pendant. Her grandmother's voice echoed. Your path leads away from here, little one. When the time comes, be brave enough to follow it. She looked at Alaric, the man who had called her defective, who had let her live invisible, unwanted. Then at Cale, the stranger who looked at her as if she mattered. Her voice was soft but steady. I'll go. The chamber exploded with voices. Alaric shouted, his betas protested, the northern warriors drew closer to Cale. But Cale's eyes never left hers. He nodded once, satisfaction gleaming in his gaze. You will not take her. Alaric lunged forward. But in a blur, Cale's hand was at his throat, his eyes burning gold, his fangs partially bared. The chamber fell silent in shock. She has chosen, Cale said, his voice a deadly growl. Challenge me on this and you will not live to regret it. Alaric froze, his chest heaving. Slowly, reluctantly, he tilted his head back, baring his neck in submission. Cale released him and stepped back calmly as if nothing had happened. He turned to Celine, his expression softening. Gather what you wish to bring. We leave within the hour. Celine's heart raced as she nodded. For the first time in her life she was not being cast aside. For the first time someone had chosen her. And she had chosen too. The council chamber still hummed with tension, the air thick as if storms were gathering within its stone walls. Torches spat and flickered, shadows dancing across the carved table. Celine stood frozen, her back to the wall, as two alphas squared off in the center of the room. Cale, king of the north, radiated power that pressed on every wolf present. His silver and gold eyes glowed faintly, promising violence if pushed. Alaric, golden-haired and proud, stood rigid, his jaw clenched tight, his pack loyalty and authority threatened before his betas. You have no right to take what belongs to my pack, Alaric snarled, voice sharp as a whip. His aura rolled out like heat from a fire trying to dominate. Cale did not flinch. He stood steady, broad shoulders squared, his tone deceptively calm. You call her yours, yet you treat her as less than a wolf. She is nothing to you until I looked at her. Alaric's face darkened, his eyes flashing amber. She's under my roof. My authority. My word. Cale tilted his head, the scar through his brow pulling taut as he smiled without warmth. Then your word is worth less than the dust beneath her feet. The betas shifted, eyes flicking nervously between the two alphas. The tension was unbearable. Celine's hands shook as she clutched her pendant, wishing she could vanish into the stones. Alaric slammed a fist down on the table, rattling goblets. You insult me in my own hall. You dare call one of mine. One of yours. Cale cut in, his voice suddenly sharp as ice. His eyes turned toward Celine, softening for only a moment before hardening again as he looked back at Alaric. Tell me, when was the last time you fed her? Spoke to her as a packmate? Protected her? Alaric faltered, guilt flickering in his gaze before anger masked it again. She eats. She works. She lives. She survives, Cale corrected, his voice low and deadly. Surviving is not living. Celine's throat tightened. She'd thought those words herself 100 times in the dark of her room, but hearing them from the mouth of the Northern King was like a blade sliding into the silence of her life. Alaric bared his teeth, fury in every line of his face. You know nothing of her. She was scented by alphas 3 years ago. No sweetness. No mate pull. Defective. The word cracked through Celine like a whip. She flinched, biting her lip hard enough to taste blood. Cale's eyes flashed gold, his aura thickening until the very air vibrated. The torches guttered. His voice dropped to a growl that made every wolf present bow their heads. Do not call her that again. For a moment the room seemed to tremble with his power. Alaric's betas lowered their eyes, throats bared instinctively. Even Alaric wavered under the weight of Cale's dominance. Celine stared wide-eyed, her heart hammering. No one had ever defended her. Not once. Not like this. Cale turned back to her, his voice softening. Celine. Her name in his mouth was strange, new, like it belonged to her in a way it never had before. Do you wish to stay here? He asked, his eyes steady on hers. Or do you wish to leave with me? The room went silent. Every head turned. Celine's breath caught. The weight of both Alpha's eyes pressed down on her. He wanted to shrink away. He wanted to disappear. But Cale's voice carried a strange warmth, steady and unyielding. It was the first time anyone had asked what she wanted. Her fingers dug into the pendant until it burned against her palm. The words tangled in her throat. She couldn't speak, couldn't think. Memories flashed before her eyes. Years of bending on sore knees, scrubbing floors until her hands bled. Standing in a dress her mother had made, head bowed, waiting for someone, anyone, to scent her, only to be dismissed. The whispers, defective, worthless, barren. Her chest ached, each heartbeat a drum of shame. But then she thought of Cale's gaze, steady and fierce. "You're not nothing." His voice had cut through her walls like fire through ice. Alaric's voice snapped her back. "Do not even think of it," he growled. "You belong here, Celine. You owe your loyalty to this pack." Her head turned sharply. Loyalty? To those who had ignored her, mocked her, left her to the scraps of existence? Her voice, quiet at first, trembled into the silence. "Loyalty is given where it is earned." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Alaric's face twisted in fury. "Ungrateful." But Cale's low growl cut him off. "She owes you nothing." Celine's legs felt weak, but something inside her steadied. Her grandmother's words whispered in her mind. "When the time comes, be brave enough to follow it." She lifted her chin, her heart pounding. "I'll go." The words fell like stones into still water. The chamber erupted. Alaric's betas shouted in protest, their voices overlapping. "She cannot. This is treachery. She is ours." The northern warriors stepped forward, their hands on their weapons, eyes hard with warning. Alaric lunged forward, fury blazing. "You dare defy me?" Celine flinched, but Cale moved faster than sight. One moment, Alaric's hand was reaching toward her. The next, Cale's fingers were locked around his throat, slamming him against the oak table. Gasps filled the chamber. Cale's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Touch her again and I will end you here." Alaric struggled, his face reddening, his aura pushing against Cale's like crashing waves. But Cale's strength was unyielding, a mountain against a storm. Finally, Alaric tilted his head back, baring his throat in submission. Cale released him, stepping back with calm precision as though he had merely adjusted a chair. He turned to Celine, his eyes softening once more. "Gather what you need. We leave within the hour." Celine's chest tightened. Her voice trembled. "Leave? Tonight?" Cale nodded. "Tonight." Alaric staggered upright, his voice a ragged snarl. "You cannot simply take her. There are laws. Protocols." "Then name your price," Cale said coldly, never looking away from Celine. "Gold Land Alliance." "Name it." Celine flinched at his words, her heart lurching. Was this all she was? A bargain? A tool to end his curse? Her stomach twisted. For a moment she almost took it back. Almost said, "I'll stay." But then Cale looked at her again and his voice softened. "No. Not a thing to be bartered. You are not a tool. You are not livestock. You are mine to protect and yours to decide." His words pressed into her like warmth against cold skin. Celine drew a shaky breath. "If I go, I want your word that I'll be treated with dignity. Not as a thing. Not as an experiment." For a moment Cale was silent. Then the faintest shadow of a smile touched his lips. "You have my word as Alpha King," he said, his tone solemn. "You will be honored in my lands. No harm will touch you." Her throat tightened. No one had ever promised her such a thing. Alaric growled, his voice bitter. "Foolish girl. You'll regret this. When his interest fades, when he sees you have nothing to offer, don't think you'll find welcome here again." The words were meant to wound, to plant seeds of doubt. Once they would have broken her. But Celine looked at Cale and for the first time she didn't care what Alaric thought. Cale's gaze burned with gold fire. "She has made her choice. Challenge it and you'll regret it." The chamber fell silent. Celine's heart pounded as she gripped her pendant, the stone warm against her palm. "I'll go." The words echoed inside her, fierce and unyielding. For the first time in her life she had chosen her own path. And though fear gnawed at her, hope burned brighter. Celine's legs carried her out of the council chamber before her mind caught up with what had just happened. Her heart raced, her breath shallow. The torches in the corridors seemed to flicker too brightly, shadows jumping across the stone walls. She was leaving. The thought hammered inside her skull like a drumbeat. "I'm leaving. I chose to leave." Her hands shook as she pushed open the creaking door to her small room in the servants' quarters. The space was little more than a closet. A narrow bed, a battered trunk, a cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. Everything she had ever owned fit within arm's reach. She stood there for a moment, frozen, staring at her life packed into four thin walls. Then she moved quickly, afraid that if she stopped too long, doubt would creep in. She shed her gray work dress, pulling on woolen leggings, a long tunic, and her winter cloak, threadbare but serviceable. She filled a small sack with the only treasures she had: her mother's silver hairbrush, her grandmother's illustrated book of legends, and a little wooden wolf her father had carved for her before fever took both her parents. She paused before the mirror, catching sight of herself. A pale, freckled face stared back, framed by unruly brown hair. Ordinary. Always ordinary. But tonight, something in her eyes looked different. There was a light there she didn't recognize. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her reflection did not answer. A knock startled her. She turned quickly, heart in her throat. When she opened the door, it wasn't Kale. It was Mira, the head cook's daughter and the closest thing Celine had ever had to a friend. "Is it true?" Mira whispered, her eyes wide. "You're leaving with the Northern King?" Celine swallowed hard and nodded. "They say he thinks you're his mate," Mira breathed almost reverently. "That you'll break his curse." Celine shook her head, the weight of the rumors pressing down on her. "I don't know what I am to him. But there's nothing for me here, Mira." Mira's eyes softened, tears glistening in them. She stepped forward and pulled Celine into a fierce hug. It was so rare, touch closeness, that Celine's throat tightened painfully. "Be careful," Mira whispered. "The north is dangerous. They say the wolves there are different." "I'll be careful," Celine promised, hugging her back. "Thank you, for being the only one who ever—" Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. Mira squeezed her once more, then pulled away, wiping at her eyes. "They're waiting in the courtyard. Go before I try to stop you." Celine nodded, clutching her small sack tight to her chest. The courtyard was packed. Word had spread quickly, and the entire pack seemed to have gathered. They stood in clusters, whispering, watching with hungry eyes as Celine stepped into the torchlight. For years they had ignored her, dismissed her. Tonight, every gaze burned with confusion, resentment, or reluctant respect. 7 massive horses waited, steam curling from their nostrils in the cool night air. Northern warriors stood tall and silent, their scarred faces unreadable. At their center was Kale, dark cloak draped over his broad shoulders, his silver-gold eyes fixed on her. The crowd parted as Celine walked forward. She felt the weight of every stare pressing down, but she kept her chin high, clutching her sack like armor. Kale extended his hand. For a moment she hesitated. Then, heart-pounding, she placed her hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip steady, and in that simple touch, something in her chest loosened. "Ready?" he asked quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. In one smooth motion, he lifted her onto the saddle of his great black stallion as if she weighed nothing. The casual strength of the act sent a flutter through her stomach. He swung up behind her, his chest solid against her back, his arms coming around her to take the reins. Alaric pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of fury. His voice rang out across the courtyard. "Remember your place, Celine. When his interest fades, do not think to return here. You are not welcome." The words stung like salt in a wound, but not as deeply as they once would have. With Kale's warmth at her back, the northern mountains waiting in the distance, she found she no longer cared what Alaric thought. Kale's chest rumbled against her spine as he spoke, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Your alpha has spoken, Celine. Remember it well when the time comes to choose your true allegiance." Then he clicked his tongue and the stallion surged forward. The gates opened, the torches of the pack fading behind them. For the first time in her life, Celine did not look back. The night swallowed them as the northern warriors rode in formation around their king. The rhythm of hooves on packed earth echoed through the silent forest, steady as a drumbeat. Above, the full moon glowed silver through the branches, spilling pale light over everything. Celine sat stiffly in the saddle, her small bag clutched in her lap. Kale's body was solid and warm behind her, his arms braced on either side as he held the reins. Every shift of the horse pressed her closer into him. Every breath she drew filled with the faint, clean scent of pine and snow that clung to him. She had never been this close to an alpha before. Not like this. Not pressed so tightly she could feel the heat of his body, the steady rise and fall of his chest. It unsettled her, made her skin prickle with awareness. Kale's voice came low, rumbling near her ear. Hold steady. The road is uneven. I'm fine, she said quickly, though her voice trembled. A soft sound rumbled in his chest, not quite laughter. Stubborn. He stiffened, cheeks burning. I'm not used to, she broke off, embarrassed. Being touched, he finished for her. His tone was not mocking but matter-of-fact. Her silence was answer enough. For a while only the sound of hooves and rustling leaves filled the air. Then Kale spoke again, softer this time. Your pack failed you. Celine's throat tightened. She stared ahead into the shadows, not trusting herself to answer. Touch is as essential to wolves as breath, he continued. To deny it is cruelty. Her chest ached at his words. She thought of years spent watching packmates embrace, brush shoulders in passing, scent mark each other with affection. All things she had never known. She had survived without them. But had she truly lived? I survived, she said quietly, more defensively than she intended. Surviving is not living, Kale replied, his voice low, unyielding. The words cut deep, sharper because they felt true. The stallion stumbled slightly over a root, and Kale's arms tightened around her, steadying her. Celine froze, heat rushing through her at the sudden closeness. He didn't let go right away. His breath brushed her ear as he murmured, I will not let you fall. Her pulse raced. She wanted to believe him. After a while, Kale raised one hand, signaling the party to halt. They had reached a clearing where an ancient oak stretched wide branches toward the star-sprinkled sky. Moonlight bathed the ground in silver. We'll rest here until dawn, Kale announced. His warriors dismounted with efficient, silent movements, already beginning to set camp. Kale slid from the saddle first, then reached up to help Celine down. Her legs buckled as her feet touched the ground, stiff from hours in the saddle. His hands remained firm at her waist until she steadied, then reluctantly withdrew. Are you hungry? He asked. Celine hesitated, then nodded. Her stomach had been gnawing at her for hours, though she hadn't dared admit it. One of the warriors, a tall woman with intricate braids and a scar across her jaw, approached carrying 2 bowls of steaming stew. She handed one to Kale with a bow of her head. Then she turned to Celine, her expression unreadable. Lady, she said simply, offering the bowl. The word startled Celine. No one had ever called her lady before. Thank you, she said quickly, though she added, but I'm not. You are what my king says you are, the woman interrupted, her tone matter-of-fact, not unkind. She gave a short nod and walked away. That was Freya, Kale explained, watching her go. My cousin. My first warrior. She wastes no words, but her loyalty is absolute. Celine looked down at the bowl, inhaling the rich scent of unfamiliar spices. She took a cautious bite, and warmth spread through her immediately. The flavor was complex, unlike anything her pack had ever made. She realized only after several bites how quickly she was eating. When she glanced up, Kale was watching her, his own bowl barely touched. Her cheeks flushed. Why are you looking at me like that? His gaze did not waver. You're not what I expected. Celine stiffened, bitterness creeping into her tone. You expected someone beautiful? Powerful? Sorry to disappoint. His eyes narrowed slightly. Do not put words in my mouth. I expected someone broken. Beaten down. Instead, I see steel beneath the surface. She looked away, uncomfortable with the heat in his gaze. You don't know me. Perhaps not everything, he admitted. But more than you think. Before she could ask what he meant, Freya returned, her expression grim. Signs of gray walkers nearby. Tracks 2 days old. Should we double the watch? Kale's jaw tightened. Yes. Wake me at the first sign of trouble. Celine frowned. Gray walkers. Kale's eyes flicked to her. Rogues. Wolves who've rejected all pack law. They live wild, hunting humans and wolves alike. They are drawn to power and to omegas. His gaze lingered on her, meaning clear. Celine shivered, pulling her cloak tighter. Kale's voice softened. You'll be safe. Rest. A tent was erected for him, and to Celine's surprise he gestured for her to enter. She hesitated, her heart pounding. You'll be safer with me, Kale said, noting her hesitation. I gave my word you would not be harmed. That includes your honor. Too tired to argue, Celine ducked inside. The tent was simple but warm, furs spread across the ground. She sank onto them gratefully, her body aching from the ride. Kale entered after her, settling on the opposite side of the tent. His presence filled the space, steady and quiet. Sleep, he said simply. We leave at dawn. Celine lay down, exhaustion pulling at her, but her thoughts churned too quickly for rest. The warmth of the stew lingered in her stomach, the weight of Kale's words in her mind. Why her? Why no? Her hand drifted to the pendant at her throat. It pulsed faintly beneath her fingers, warm as a heartbeat. She closed her eyes, Kale's words echoing in the darkness. You're not nothing. For the first time in years she wondered if he was right. The campfire crackled, sending sparks spiraling into the star-dusted sky. The clearing smelled of smoke and pine, sharp and clean in the cool night air. Celine sat cross-legged on a thick fur, clutching her empty bowl, her stomach finally full for the first time in days. Across the fire, Kale sat in silence, his broad shoulders outlined in flickering orange light. He had eaten little, his bowl still half full, his gaze fixed on the flames. Celine shifted uncomfortably under the weight of his attention. Every time she glanced up, his silver and gold eyes seemed to be watching her, steady and unreadable. Finally she blurted, You barely touched your food. His mouth curved faintly, though it was more shadow than smile. I am used to hunger. The words made her chest tighten. She thought of the gaunt faces of the northern warriors, of the whispered rumors about endless winter. Because of the curse? She asked softly. He lifted his eyes to her. The firelight danced in them, highlighting the golden ring around the stormy silver. Yes. 3 months of sun cannot feed a kingdom. We hunt. We trade. We survive. But each year grows harder. The fire popped loudly, making Celine flinch. She looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of her cloak. And you think I'm the answer? Me. You are, Kale said simply. She shook her head, a bitter laugh slipping out. You sound so certain. But I've never been certain of anything. Not even myself. His gaze sharpened. That is because you have been blinded. Hidden. Her hand flew instinctively to the pendant beneath her tunic. The amber stone pulsed faintly against her palm, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. Kale leaned forward slightly, his voice lower. That pendant. It is not just a trinket. It hides you. Masks your scent, your nature. Old magic. Celine's breath caught. Her grandmother's whisper echoed in her mind. This will protect you when I cannot. My grandmother gave it to me, she said softly. She said it would protect me. Kale's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability in their depths. And it has. But protection has a cost. It has kept you from knowing your true self. Celine shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. You make it sound like I'm something more than what I am. But I'm not. I'm just defective. Kale's voice cut across the night like a blade. Do not call yourself that again. She flinched at the sharpness of his tone, but when she met his gaze she saw no cruelty there, only fury, not at her but at the words themselves. You are not broken, he said softer now. You are hidden. There is a difference. Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. Celine's heart pounded in her chest. Kale leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. The prophecy was clear. Only when the forgotten one is remembered, when the scentless carries the sweetest perfume, will the sun return. Celine swallowed hard. And you think that's me? I know it is, Kale said, his voice firm with conviction. From the moment I saw you. From the moment I could not scent you and yet felt something stronger than scent. Her chest tightened painfully. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe she was more than a mistake, more than a shadow. But fear whispered in her ear. What if he's wrong? What if he realizes I'm nothing after all? She looked away, staring into the flames. You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. Who I am. I know enough, Kale said quietly. The warmth of the fire pressed against her skin, but the warmth of his words seeped deeper, threatening to crack something inside her she had kept locked away for years. She dared not answer. Instead she pulled her cloak tighter and lay down on the furs, turning her back to the fire. Her heart still raced, her mind a storm. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, it's just a dream. Has to be a dream. But the dreams waiting for her were far from ordinary. At first, the dream was simple. Snow. Endless snow, falling in thick flakes that covered the ground in white silence. Celine stood barefoot, her cloak gone, the cold biting into her skin. Then shadows stirred in the whiteness. Shapes with glowing eyes slithered between the trees. Wolves, but wrong. Their bodies stretched too long, their mouths gaping wider than they should, teeth gleaming. A voice hissed through the storm, low and cruel. You do not belong. You are nothing. Defective. Celine stumbled backward, clutching her pendant, but in the dream the leather cord snapped, the amber stone falling into the snow. Darkness poured from it, swallowing the white. The shadow wolves lunged. Celine screamed and jerked awake, heart pounding, breath ragged. The tent was dark, the fire outside burned low. For a moment she couldn't tell where she was. Then a voice came from the darkness beside her. Celine. She turned and Cale was there, sitting cross-legged only a few feet away. His face was shadowed, but his eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light. You dreamed, he said, not a question. She shivered, pulling the cloak tighter. Snow. Shadows. They chased me. And a voice. It told me I was nothing. Cale's jaw tightened. The curse. It has already begun to touch you. Celine's stomach twisted. You said I'd be safe. You are safe from harm, Cale said firmly. But the curse is alive. It resists. It will try to frighten you, weaken you, turn you against yourself. Her hands shook as she touched her pendant. It was warm, steady, as if it fought against something unseen. What if it's right, she whispered. What if I'm not the one? Cale leaned forward, his voice sharp. Do not let it inside you. That is how it wins. Celine's throat closed. Tears pricked her eyes. You don't understand. I've heard those words all my life. Defective. Worthless. What if? I understand more than you think, Cale cut in, his tone fierce. The intensity in his gaze stole her breath. For a moment she saw something in him. Not the king, not the warrior, but the man beneath. A man carrying his people's suffering. A man fighting not only darkness in his land but in himself. His voice lowered, almost gentle. You are not nothing, Celine. You are the reason I still believe the curse can be broken. Her chest ached, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Before she could answer, a shout came from outside the tent. Pi King. Cale rose in an instant, drawing his cloak around him. He pushed the tent flap open, Celine scrambling to follow. The clearing was bathed in pale moonlight. Freya stood at the edge of the trees, her sword drawn. Tracks, she said grimly. Fresh. Grey walkers. 2, maybe 3. No more than a day old. Cale's expression hardened. Double the watch. We move faster at dawn. Celine's heart thudded painfully. Grey walkers. Rogues who hunted omegas. And now they were close. As Cale turned back to her, she saw it again, that glimmer of something softer in his stormy gaze. You will not be touched, he said. It was not a promise. It was a vow. For the first time since leaving her pack, Celine believed him. And for the first time in her life she felt the stirrings of something dangerous, something terrifying. Hope. The first hints of dawn bled across the sky as Celine rode pressed against Cale's chest, exhaustion pulling at her limbs. She had not truly slept after the dream. Her body ached, but her mind was sharper than ever, her senses alert. The landscape had changed as they traveled north. Where once the trees were thick and the ground covered in autumn leaves, now frost clung to branches, turning them into silver skeletons. Patches of snow dotted the earth despite the season. The air grew colder with each mile, biting at her cheeks until they burned. By mid-afternoon the first villages appeared, clusters of stone cottages, smoke curling thin from their chimneys. Children stood at doorways, their eyes wide and hollow, their clothes patched. Men and women looked up as the procession passed, their faces gaunt, their expressions wary but reverent when they saw Cale. Celine's throat tightened. These were his people. They bore the curse like scars carved into their bones. They look so tired, she whispered, unable to stop herself. Cale's jaw flexed. They are. Too many winters. Too little food. A woman in a wool cloak clutched a child to her hip as she stared at Celine with something unreadable. Hope, perhaps, or desperation. Celine ducked her head, her stomach twisting with guilt. She was no savior. She was barely more than a servant girl with a necklace. By evening they crested a hill. Celine's breath caught. There was Black Frost Keep, a massive fortress carved from the very mountain itself, its towers rising like jagged teeth into the sky. The walls were black stone, rimed with ice, gleaming with frost in the dying light. It looked less like it had been built and more like it had grown from the bones of the earth. "It's beautiful," Celine whispered before she could stop herself. Cale glanced down at her, surprise flickering in his gaze. "Most see only cold and death." "I see strength," she said softly. "Endurance." For a heartbeat his eyes softened, a flash of warmth breaking through the stormy silver. His arm tightened subtly around her as if acknowledging her words. They crossed through the massive iron gates into a bustling courtyard. Servants rushed forward to take the horses. Warriors saluted, their eyes lingering curiously on Celine. She shrank back against Cale, overwhelmed by the attention. "Stand tall," he murmured near her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "Show them your strength." Easy for him to say. He was their king. She was no one. Still, she lifted her chin, forcing her legs not to tremble as Cale helped her down. Before she could catch her breath, a woman approached. She was older, her silver hair braided into a crown around her head, her bearing regal despite her simple but fine clothing. Her eyes, sharp as glass, flicked to Cale first. "You've returned early, my son," she said. Celine froze. His mother. Cale inclined his head in respect. "Mother. This is Celine." The Queen Dowager's gaze shifted to Celine, assessing. Her eyes narrowed, then widened slightly. She stepped closer, her hand lifting, hovering near Celine's face. "Hey, she asked. Confused, Celine nodded. Cool fingers brushed her cheek, tilted her chin toward the light. The Queen studied her intently, her eyes softening. "The eyes," she whispered. "Exactly like Lyra's." Celine's breath caught. Her grandmother's name. Cale's gaze flicked to his mother. "You see it too." The Queen's lips trembled before she masked the emotion. "I see it." Her voice was thick with something Celine couldn't name. She turned to Cale, her eyes fierce. "You were right to bring her here. But whether she is truly the one," she shook her head slowly, "that remains to be seen." Celine's heart pounded. She had no idea what any of this meant. But one thing was clear. Her grandmother's shadow stretched farther than she had ever realized. The Queen Dowager led them through winding corridors, up staircases worn smooth by centuries. Torches lit their way, flickering light across tapestries of wolves and ancient battles. Celine's steps faltered more than once, but Cale's steady hand at her back kept her moving. They entered a circular chamber high in the tower. A fire roared in the hearth, casting golden light across walls lined with shelves of scrolls, books, and glass jars filled with strange substances. At the center stood a massive table inlaid with silver runes that seemed to shift when Celine looked at them too long. "The seer's chamber," Cale said quietly. "No one has used it since my grandmother's death." Celine's chest tightened. His grandmother. A seer. Like mine. The Queen gestured to a chair by the fire. "Sit, child. You must be weary." Celine obeyed, though she felt out of place in the tall-backed seat. Her fingers twisted in her cloak, her nerves buzzing. The Queen prepared tea from a carved wooden box, the scent of herbs filling the chamber. She poured steaming liquid into 3 cups and handed one to Celine. "It will clear the mind," she said. Celine sipped cautiously. The taste was bitter, then oddly sweet, warming her from the inside out. The Queen settled across from her, her gaze never leaving Celine's face. "Do you want to know who you are?" Celine's throat tightened. She nodded. The Queen set her cup down gently. "Your grandmother, Lyra Blackthorn, was my cousin and my closest friend. She was also the most powerful seer our people had known in generations." Celine's breath caught. She had always known her grandmother was different but powerful, important. She had never imagined. "The Blackthorns carried seer blood," the Queen continued. "But Lyra's gift was exceptional. She could see not just possible futures but the threads that bound them." Celine whispered, "If she was so powerful, why did she live with my pack? Why was she nothing there?" The Queen and Cale exchanged a heavy glance. "She was taken," Cale said finally, his voice rough. 30 years ago. A witch came to the north, seeking sanctuary. She brought with her a curse. When my father rejected her, she bound our lands in winter. Lyra tried to break it, but the curse was cruel. He was weakened. And in that moment Alaric's father stole her away. Celine's blood ran cold. Stole her. The queen's face hardened. He coveted a seer for his pack. He hid her. By the time we found her again, years had passed. He had a daughter. Your mother. Celine's hand flew to her mouth. Her mother. Her grandmother. All tangled in secrets she had never known. Cale leaned forward, his gaze steady. Your grandmother gave you that pendant to protect you. To hide you. To keep you safe from those who would use you, and from the curse itself. Celine touched the amber stone at her throat. It pulsed faintly, warm as living flesh. You are Blackthorn blood, the queen said softly. You carry the gift, though it sleeps beneath that stone. Tears blurred Celine's eyes. All her life she had been told she was nothing. Defective. Worthless. And now they told her she was descended from seers, from a bloodline that had once shaped the future. Her voice cracked. Why me? Why now? The queen's gaze softened, sorrow and hope mingling in her eyes. Because the curse grows stronger. And because, child, you may be the only one who can end it. Celine's heart pounded, her hand clutching the pendant so tightly it dug into her palm. She was no longer sure if it protected her, or if it chained her. The chamber grew colder as the Queen Dowager's words sank into Celine's chest like stones. You may be the only one who can end it. Celine's hand trembled where it gripped the amber pendant. It pulsed faintly beneath her fingers, warm as though alive. She wanted to deny it. To push the weight of those words away. She was no savior, just a girl who had been forgotten, dismissed, hidden in shadows. But Cale's steady gaze anchored her. His silver-gold eyes seemed to pierce through every wall she had built. You don't believe me, Celine whispered, more to herself than to them. I believe, Cale said at once, his voice steady and deep. I knew from the moment I saw you. The Queen Dowager moved closer, her steps slow but deliberate. Her voice carried the weight of years. That stone around your neck. It is a veil woven by Lyra's power. It masks your true nature, your scent, your gift. But it also binds you. Celine's throat tightened. Binds me. Child, the queen said softly, a river caged will one day burst its banks. You carry power inside you, but you have never touched it. When the time comes, the curse will force you to unleash it. If you wait until then, you may not survive it. Silence pressed down, broken only by the crackling fire. Celine's mind spun. Her grandmother had given her this pendant to protect her. Could she betray that gift by removing it? What if the queen was wrong? What if, when it came off, there was nothing inside her at all? Nothing but emptiness. Cale leaned forward, his massive frame tense. His voice softened in a way that made Celine's chest ache. You are stronger than you think. But you must see yourself as you truly are. Not as Alaric named you. Not as your pack left you. As you. Celine's eyes stung with sudden tears. For so long she had been told she was nothing. And now they looked at her as if she were everything. Her fingers shook as they closed around the pendant. What if I'm not enough? She whispered. Cale's voice was low, firm. Then I will be enough for both of us. But I do not believe that day will come. Her heart lurched painfully. The Queen Dowager's voice cut through the moment. Remove it. Let us see. The chamber seemed to shrink. Celine's pulse roared in her ears. She tugged at the leather cord once, twice, but her hands froze. I can't, she gasped, dropping her hands as if the stone burned her. The queen's eyes narrowed, though not unkindly. Fear holds you. But fear is what the curse feeds on. Celine wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the fire. I need time. Cale stood slowly, his aura filling the room, steady as a mountain. Then time you will have. No one will force you. The queen's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. So be it. But do not wait too long, child. Shadows grow bolder with each day. Celine exhaled shakily, guilt pressing against her ribs. She wanted to be brave, to rip the pendant free and prove them right. But she couldn't, not yet. As Cale led her from the chamber, his large hand hovered near her back, not touching but steadying her all the same. For the first time she wondered if she could trust her own courage. Night fell heavy over Black Frost Keep. The wind howled through the mountain passes. rattling the shutters like ghostly fingers. Celine lay on the furs in her chamber, her body exhausted but her mind restless. She dreamed again. Snow, endless snow swallowing the world. And voices whispering from the storm. Defective. Worthless. You're nothing. This time the whispers grew claws. Shadows stretched into monstrous shapes, teeth gnashing, eyes glowing like coals. Grey walkers. They lunged, tearing at the walls of her dream. Celine screamed, and woke to real screams echoing through the keep. She bolted upright, heart hammering. The air was sharp with the scent of smoke, the sound of steel clashing. The door burst open. Freya stood there, sword dripping, dark ichor, her braid half loosed. "They're inside," she snapped. "Grey walkers." Celine's blood ran cold. The shadows from her dream had followed her into waking. Cale appeared behind Freya, his blade already drawn, his eyes burning gold. "Stay here," he ordered. "No." The word ripped from Celine's throat before she could think. "They're here for me." Cale's gaze snapped to hers. For a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them. He knew she was right. The keep shook as something slammed against the outer walls. A guttural howl split the night. Celine flinched, clutching her pendant so tightly it dug into her skin. Freya snarled, already moving to the door. "We'll hold them off." Cale stepped into the hall, his aura exploding outward like a storm. "Stay with her," he barked to two warriors before disappearing into the chaos. Celine stood frozen, her breath ragged. Shadows flickered at the edges of the torchlight, too fast, too wrong. One slipped past the warriors, lunging at her. Her scream caught in her throat as glowing eyes bore into hers. And then the pendant burned white-hot against her chest. Power ripped through her veins, searing and wild. The world slowed, the creature's lunge caught mid-air. She could see every twisted fang, every ripple of its stretched skin. Her body moved without thought. She raised her hand and light burst from her palm, blinding, pure. The Grey Walker shrieked, disintegrating into smoke before it touched her. The chamber fell silent, the two warriors staring in shock. Celine collapsed to her knees, gasping. The pendant still glowed faintly, the stone hot to the touch. Freya returned, blood spattered across her face, her eyes wide as they fell on Celine. What did you do?" Celine shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know. But deep down she did." For the first time the power inside her had answered. And the curse had felt it. The smoke had barely cleared. The stones of the keep still trembled with the echoes of battle. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of burned shadow. Celine crouched on the cold floor, trembling, her palms still tingling where the light had burst from her. The Grey Walker was gone, nothing but ash staining the stones, but the memory of its screams still rang in her ears. Her eyes darted to the warriors standing guard. Their faces were pale, their mouths slightly open. They had seen it. "I didn't mean to," Celine whispered, her voice raw. "It just happened." Freya stepped forward, her blade lowered but her gaze sharp. "You destroyed it. Alone." Celine shook her head fiercely. "No, I don't even know how." The door burst open and Cale strode in. His blade was slick with dark ichor, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with gold light. His gaze swept the chamber, landing on Celine. He crossed to her in 3 strides, dropping to one knee. His hand, rough and warm, cupped her cheek. "You're unharmed." Celine's lips trembled. I killed it. I didn't mean to, but I burned it away." Cale's eyes softened, relief breaking through the storm in them. He brushed back a strand of hair from her damp face. "You called your gift." She shook her head again, tears spilling. "I didn't call anything. It just..." She looked down at her shaking hands. "It felt like it was burning me alive." Cale pulled her gently against his chest, wrapping her in his cloak. His heartbeat thundered against her ear, steady and strong. "You are not alone in this," he murmured. "Not anymore." For a moment she let herself lean into him, her trembling easing under the shield of his arms. But then the Queen Dowager appeared in the doorway, her expression grave. "The curse will not let this go unanswered," she said. "Dowit knows. And it will strike harder." Celine pulled back, her stomach twisting. "Then what do I do? How do I stop it?" The Queen's sharp gaze held hers. "You learn. You train. You stop fearing what you carry." Cale helped Celine to her feet, steadying her when her knees wobbled. His voice was calm but resolute. From this night on she begins. Celine's pulse raced. Trained. Use this wild thing inside her on purpose? Her instinct screamed to hide, to keep the pendant tight around her throat. But a memory stirred. Alaric's voice calling her defective, worthless. And then the Grey Walker's whisper echoing the same words. She straightened, her hands still trembling. Then teach me. The Queen Dowager's eyes softened, though her tone remained cool. It will not be easy. Celine's chin lifted. Nothing in my life has been. Cale's hand pressed briefly against the small of her back, steady and reassuring. Then you're ready. Training began the next morning before dawn. The courtyard was rimmed with frost, the sky still dark, stars fading one by one. Celine's breath clouded in the cold as she stood across from Freya. Your power is wild, Freya said, pacing slowly. It answers fear, anger. That makes it dangerous. You must learn to call it with will, not panic. Celine swallowed hard. And if I can't? Freya's scarred mouth twitched. Then it will consume you instead. Her blood went cold. Cale stood nearby, watching with arms folded, his gaze steady. His presence was both pressure and comfort. Focus, Freya instructed. Find the current inside you. Not the stone. Call it. Celine closed her eyes, pressing her hand to the pendant. She reached inward into the well of fear, shame, and something else. Something bright and sharp buried deep. Heat flickered faintly in her veins. The air around her shifted. But then memories surged, years of voices calling her defective, of being invisible. Her chest tightened, her breath catching. Nothing happened. Her eyes flew open, panic rising. I can't. It's not there. Cale's voice cut across the courtyard, low and steady. Celine. Look at me. Her gaze met his. His eyes burned with certainty, fierce and unshakable. You are not broken, he said firmly. You are not nothing. Say it. Her throat closed. She shook her head. Say it, he repeated, stepping closer. Her lips trembled. I'm not nothing. Louder. I'm not nothing. His hand closed over hers, warm and grounding. Again. I'm not nothing, she shouted, the words ripping free of her like a scream. And the light answered. It burst from her chest in a wave, white and blinding. Frost on the stones melted. The air crackled with energy. Freya shielded her eyes, muttering a curse. When the light faded, Celine stood panting, her hands glowing faintly, warmth pulsing through her veins. Cale's lips curved in the faintest smile. There. That is the truth of you. Celine's chest heaved, tears spilling freely now, not of fear but of release. For the first time she had called it. For the first time she believed she could. The next night the curse struck back. Celine was in her chamber when the first crack sounded, a splintering groan that echoed through the stone. She jumped to her feet, clutching her pendant. Then came the cold. Frost raced along the walls like veins of glass, spreading faster than fire. Torches sputtered and died, their flames swallowed. The air dropped until her breath came in visible bursts, her skin stinging with ice. She stumbled into the hall. Warriors rushed past, their swords already drawn, their armor rimed with frost. Cale, she cried, her voice echoing. He appeared at the far end of the corridor, striding through the spreading frost, his aura blazing gold. His cloak snapped behind him, his sword glowing faintly as it clashed against the unnatural cold. Stay back, he barked. But Celine shook her head, teeth chattering. It's after me. The frost thickened, climbing the walls, freezing doors shut. Warriors hacked at encroaching ice that grew back as quickly as it was cut away. Cale reached her, seizing her wrist. His hand was warm despite the cold, his eyes fierce. This is the curse's will. It knows you've awakened. It fears you. Celine's chest heaved, panic choking her. The ice crawled closer, tendrils reaching like claws. I can't fight this, she gasped. Yes, you can. His hand gripped hers tighter. You faced the Grey Walker. You faced your own fear. This is no different. Her pendant throbbed against her chest, hot as a brand. She clutched it with her free hand, tears freezing on her lashes. Focus. Cale commanded, his voice like thunder. Do not let the curse name you. Name yourself. Her breath came ragged, but she forced the words out. I am Celine. I am not nothing. The ice shrieked as if alive. Cracks split through it, jagged and sharp. I am not broken, she cried louder, heat building in her veins. I am blackthorn blood. Light erupted from her, blinding and fierce. The frost shattered in a wave, shards flying like glass. Heat rolled through the corridor, melting ice, driving the cold back. Warriors staggered, shielding their faces. The unnatural frost retreated, hissing, vanishing into the shadows. Silence followed. The stones steamed, water dripping in rivulets where ice had been. Celine collapsed to her knees, gasping. Her hands glowed faintly, fading as she trembled. Cale dropped beside her, his hand bracing her shoulder. His gaze burned with pride, fierce and unguarded. You see, he murmured. The curse fears you. Celine's tears spilled hot and fast, mixing with the steam. She had done it not by accident, not by panic. By choice. For the first time in her life she did not feel defective. She felt dangerous. And she was ready to become more. The storm began at midnight. A howl tore across the mountains, deep and unnatural, rattling the very stones of Black Frost Keep. The air turned brittle cold, every torch snuffed out in an instant. Celine bolted upright from her furs, her breath pluming in the darkness. Then came the voice. You're nothing. Defective. Mistake. It slithered through her skull, the same cruel whisper she had heard all her life, now thunderous, impossible to ignore. She stumbled to her feet, clutching her pendant, heart hammering. Outside horns sounded. Boots thundered through the halls as warriors shouted to one another. Cale burst into her chamber, sword drawn, eyes glowing gold. Frost rimed his hair and cloak, the storm following him inside. It's here, he said, his voice low, grim. Before she could answer, the wall shuddered violently. Cracks split through the stone, ice forcing its way in like claws. A massive shadow loomed beyond the window, something vast and formless, made of storm and teeth and endless winter. Celine's stomach dropped. This was no Grey Walker. This was the curse itself, given flesh. Cale seized her hand, pulling her toward the door. We hold it at the heart of the keep. Come. They ran through winding corridors. Warriors lined the halls, their swords glowing faintly with runes. The Queen Dowager stood at the great hall's threshold, her silver hair whipping in the wind that already clawed its way inside. Her sharp gaze landed on Celine. The time has come. Either you end it tonight, or it ends us. Celine's chest heaved, fear rising like a tide. Her hand trembled at her throat, gripping the pendant so tightly it dug into her palm. I can't. If I take it off, what if there's nothing there? The Queen's voice cut sharp as a blade. Then we all freeze. Choose. The great doors exploded inward. Ice and shadow surged, howling. The curse's form filled the hall, monstrous and shifting, eyes like burning voids. Warriors charged, their blades striking only frost. Cale shoved Celine behind him, his aura blazing. He roared, his voice shaking the hall. Celine. Now. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. This will protect you when I cannot. But protection had kept her caged. Her fingers clawed at the leather cord. It resisted as though alive. Panic spiked, but then Cale's voice rang out again, fierce and steady. You are not nothing. You're mine, Celine. You are ours. Show it. With a cry, she tore the pendant free. The cord snapped. The amber stone fell, shattering on the floor. Light exploded. Celine screamed as heat and power ripped through her veins, burning, searing, reshaping her from the inside out. She collapsed to her knees, her body trembling violently. Every nerve screamed with power. The curse roared, a sound that shook the mountain. It surged toward her, frost crawling across the floor. But Cale was there, his sword flashing, his body between her and the storm. Stand, Celine. Stand. She forced her shaking legs to obey. She lifted her hands and light poured from her skin, blinding, fierce. The curse shrieked as the radiance struck it. Shadows peeled away, steam rising where light met frost. Celine's voice broke free, ragged but powerful. I am not nothing. I am blackthorn blood. I am the end of your winter. Her body glowed brighter, the power no longer wild but directed. She thrust her hands forward, the light forming into a wave that crashed into the monstrous form. The curse howled, thrashing, clawing at the walls. The keep shook as stone cracked, snow pouring from the rafters. Warriors stumbled, shielding their eyes. Kale roared and drove his blade into the heart of the storm. At the same instant Celine's light surged through him, amplifying his strike. Sword and seer's gift together pierced the core of the curse. There was silence. Then the storm shattered. The great hall exploded with light as the curse dissolved into shards of shadow and frost, shrieking before vanishing into nothing. The sudden quiet rang louder than the battle itself. Celine collapsed, darkness tugging at her vision. But Kale caught her before she struck the ground, pulling her against his chest. His voice was rough, fierce with relief. "You did it." She clung weakly to him, tears spilling down her cheeks. I felt it. All of it. It hated me." Kale pressed his forehead to hers, his voice softening. "And you destroyed it." Her body trembled, drained, but somewhere deep inside, warmth burned steady. For the first time, the shadows inside her had been silenced. For the first time she believed she was more than fear. The morning broke with sunlight. Real sunlight. Celine stood on the battlements wrapped in a heavy cloak, her hair unbound, her body still aching from the night before. But her breath caught at the sight before her. The mountains stretched endless into the horizon, and for the first time in years snow was melting. Ice dripped from the walls, rivers rushing with thaw. Patches of green peeked from beneath white blankets. Spring had come. Villagers below filled the courtyards, their voices rising in wonder. Children laughed, chasing water as it trickled down cobblestones. Old men wept openly, faces lifted to the sun. Celine's chest ached, tears burning her eyes. "You did this," Kale's voice said behind her. She turned. He stood tall in his dark cloak, silver hair glinting in the new light, his sword sheathed at his side. His eyes were no longer storm but steady flame, golden in the sun. "No," she whispered. "We did this." His mouth curved faintly, rare and almost shy. "Perhaps." They stood in silence, the sunlight warming their faces. For the first time there was no shadow hanging over the keep. The Queen Dowager joined them, her eyes shining with quiet pride. She looked at Celine long and hard, then finally spoke. "Your grandmother would be proud. You carry her gift, but you have made it your own." Celine swallowed hard, emotion tightening her throat. She had always longed for her grandmother's approval, her mother's pride, her pack's recognition. But in this moment she realized she didn't need their voices anymore. She had found her own. Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You came north as a servant. Forgotten. Cast aside." His voice softened, his gaze steady. "But you are none of those things now. You are seer. You are Blackthorn. You are queen if you will stand with me." Celine's heart stopped. "Queen." He held her gaze, unflinching. "My people will need guidance. Light as much as steel. I cannot give them both alone. But with you," his thumb brushed her knuckles, gentle despite his scarred hand. "With you we rebuild." The word queen echoed in her chest, heavy but not crushing. Once she had been called defective. Now she was offered a throne. Her choice was clear. She squeezed his hand, her voice steady. "I'll stand with you." Kale's smile was small but real, breaking through his usual storm. He leaned his forehead against hers, his breath warm in the cool air. The villagers below cheered as sunlight flooded the keep. Bells rang, voices rising in joy. Celine closed her eyes, the warmth of Kale's touch and the sun on her skin mingling. The forgotten girl was gone. In her place stood the woman who had broken the winter. The winter has broken, but Celine's journey has only just begun. If this story gripped you, don't let it end here. Smash that like button to keep the fire burning, hit subscribe to join me on the next chapter of Fate, and ring the bell icon so you never miss the twists that are still to come. And tell me in the comments, if you were in Celine's place, would you have torn off the pendant? Or kept hiding? Your choice might just shape the next tale I tell.